Marriage. The ultimate sacrifice. I wasn't ready. The photograph winked back at me from the mantelpiece. Clara, radiant in her wedding dress, her smile a dazzling white weapon. Next to her, me, looking like a hostage forced to pose for a family album. It was a perfect picture of a perfect day, a perfect lie. Dr. Armitage adjusted his glasses, the movement precise and unsettling. "And you feel this unease persists, Elias?" "Persists?" I echoed. "It's amplified. It's suffocating. I feel like I'm living in a movie where everyone knows the script but me." I'd married Clara Dubois 3 months ago. 3 months of wedded bliss, if bliss involved waking up in a cold sweat, convinced something was watching me. Clara was everything I wasn't. Confident, successful, breathtakingly beautiful, and heir to a fortune that dwarfed my aspirations as a struggling writer into insignificance. I was supposed to feel lucky. I felt terrified. "The Duboises are a force of nature," I continued, nervously picking at a loose thread on my jeans. "They move with this quiet power, like they know something everyone else doesn't." He steepled his fingers. "And this power extends to Clara?" "Clara is the epicenter," I said. "She's too perfect, Dr. Armitage. Too controlled. It's like she's wearing a mask, and I have this creeping feeling the face underneath isn't human." He remained impassive, scribbling something in his notepad. "You mentioned nightmares, Elias. Relentless. I wake up screaming. I'm wandering around the house in my sleep, sometimes even going outside. That morning's local paper lay on the coffee table. Another missing person. Sarah Jenkins, 23, last seen jogging near Blackwood Forest, the dense woods bordering our property. Blonde hair, blue eyes, a bright, promising future. Gone. Just like the 3 others who had vanished in the past few weeks." The article gave me the creeps. A shiver crawled up my spine. "Maybe it's just stress," I muttered, trying to sound rational even to myself. Marriage, moving, trying to finish the damn novel. Armitage didn't reply, his silence more unnerving than any accusation. That night, Clara cooked dinner. Lobster thermidor, her specialty. She moved around the kitchen with the effortless grace of a seasoned chef, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her eyes glinting in the warm light. I felt a pang of guilt. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was projecting my own insecurities onto her. "Everything all right, darling?" she asked, noticing my silence. "Fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Everything's perfect." She smiled back, but her eyes didn't quite reach her smile. They remained cold, calculating. Later, after dinner, I found myself drawn to the attic. I told myself I was looking for old photographs, something, anything, to ground me in reality. But I knew, deep down, I was looking for something else. Something incriminating. The attic was a dusty, forgotten space, filled with cobwebs and forgotten relics of the Dubois family. I rummaged through boxes filled with old letters, faded portraits, and antique furniture. Nothing seemed out of place, until I found a small, leather-bound journal tucked away in a corner. The handwriting was elegant, precise, and undeniably Clara's. I hesitated, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I knew I shouldn't read it, but I couldn't stop myself. The first entry was innocuous enough, detailing Clara's childhood, her love for her family, her aspirations for the future. But as I read on, the entries became darker. Mentions of ancient rituals, of sacrifices, of a bloodline that demanded obedience. I skimmed through pages filled with cryptic symbols and disturbing drawings. My blood ran cold. The last entry was dated the day before our wedding. The ritual is almost complete. The vessel is chosen. Soon, the power will be ours. I slammed the journal shut, my heart pounding in my chest. Vessel. Was she talking about me? I had to get out. I had to tell someone. But who would believe me? I was the struggling writer, the outsider, the one who didn't belong. Clara was the golden girl, the pillar of the community. Who would take my word over hers? I called Liam, my best friend from college, the only person who knew about my reservations about Clara. "Dude, you sound like you've seen a ghost," he said, his voice laced with concern. "I think I have," I replied, my voice trembling. "Liam, I think Clara is involved in something terrible. I found a journal. It's talking about rituals, sacrifices." "Whoa, hold on," he interrupted. "Are you sure you're not just letting your anxiety get the best of you? Maybe you should talk to Armitage again." "I can't talk to Armitage," I said, the paranoia creeping back in. "I don't trust him. I think he's in on it." Liam sighed. "Look, I know you're freaked out, but you need to calm down. Come over tomorrow, we'll talk about it. Maybe we can figure something out." I hung up, feeling slightly reassured. At least someone believed me. Or at least someone was willing to listen. The next morning, I drove to my favorite cafe, hoping a strong cup of coffee and a friendly face would help clear my head. Sarah, the waitress, greeted me with a warm smile. "Rough night, Elias?" she asked, pouring me a cup of coffee. "You look like you haven't slept in days." "You have no idea," I muttered, taking a long sip of the coffee. Sarah paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You know, I saw Clara Dubois downtown yesterday. She was talking to Detective Mallory. They looked pretty serious." Detective Mallory, the lead investigator on the missing person cases. What were they talking about? The paranoia washed over me again, stronger than before. I felt like I was drowning. "Thanks, Sarah," I said, forcing a smile. "You're a lifesaver." I left the cafe and drove straight to the police station. I had to talk to Mallory. I had to tell him everything. But when I arrived, I was told he was out of the office. I left a message, begging him to call me as soon as possible. That night, Clara and I were invited to dinner at her parents' house. The Dubois mansion was even more imposing than our own, a sprawling estate that seemed to exude wealth and power. Mrs. Brawling estate that seemed to exude wealth and power. Dubois greeted us at the door, her smile as cold as the marble floor beneath my feet. Her eyes, sharp and piercing, seemed to bore into me, assessing, judging. Mr. Dubois, a quiet, unassuming man, stood silently in the background, his eyes darting nervously around the room. He barely spoke a word. Dinner was a tense affair. Mrs. Dubois dominated the conversation, peppering me with questions about my writing, her tone laced with thinly veiled contempt. Clara sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on my arm, her touch both comforting and strangely possessive. After dinner, Mrs. Dubois led me to her study. The room was filled with antique furniture and rare artifacts, a testament to the Dubois family's long and storied history. "Elias," she said, her voice low and gravelly. "Clara tells me you've been having difficulties adjusting to married life." I hesitated, unsure how to respond. "The Duboises are a proud family, Elias," she continued, her eyes fixed on mine. "We expect loyalty and discretion. Clara has made her choice. You would do well to remember that." Her words were a veiled threat, a warning to keep my mouth shut. I nodded, my throat dry. As we were leaving, Mr. Dubois caught my eye. He gave me a fleeting, almost imperceptible nod, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and pity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, my mind racing. I kept seeing Mrs. Dubois's cold eyes, hearing her chilling words. I got up and went downstairs, hoping a glass of water would help calm my nerves. As I walked through the living room, I noticed something strange. The curtains were open, and I could see a figure standing outside in the garden. I crept closer to the window and peered out. It was Clara. She was standing in the moonlight, her arms raised to the sky, chanting in a language I didn't understand. Her face was contorted in a strange, almost inhuman expression. I watched in horror as she finished her incantation. Then, she turned and looked directly at me. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural light. I stumbled back from the window, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew with absolute certainty that I was in grave danger. The next few days were a blur. I tried to avoid Clara, but she was always there, watching me, her eyes filled with a strange, unnerving intensity. I tried to call Detective Mallory again, but he still hadn't returned my calls. The nightmares worsened. I woke up screaming, covered in sweat, convinced something was lurking in the shadows. I started sleepwalking again, waking up in strange places with no memory of how I got there. One night, I woke up in the basement. I had no idea how I got there. The basement was dark and damp, filled with cobwebs and forgotten junk. As I stumbled around, trying to find the light switch, I bumped into something. It was a wall. But it didn't feel like a normal wall. It felt hollow. I pushed against the wall and it gave way, revealing a hidden room. The room was lit by flickering candlelight, and the air was thick with the smell of incense and something else, something metallic. The room was filled with strange artifacts, ancient statues, ritualistic daggers, and jars filled with something unidentifiable. In the center of the room, there was a table covered in a blood-stained cloth. On the table lay an open journal. It was the same journal I had found in the attic. I picked up the journal and started to read. The entries were even more disturbing than before. They detailed a series of rituals, each more gruesome than the last. The rituals were designed to appease an ancient entity, an entity that demanded blood sacrifices. I flipped through the pages, my heart pounding in my chest. Then, I saw it. An entry dated for tonight. The final sacrifice will be made tonight. The vessel is ready. The power will be ours. Vessel. Me. I dropped the journal and stumbled out of the hidden room, my mind reeling. I had to get out. I had to escape. But as I turned to leave, I saw Clara standing in the doorway. Her eyes were glowing with that same unnatural light. "You shouldn't have come down here, Elias," she said, her voice low and menacing. "Now, you know too much." A violent storm raged outside, mirroring the turmoil within me. The power flickered and died, plunging the house into darkness. "What are you doing, Clara?" I stammered, backing away from her. "What is all this?" "This is our destiny, Elias," she replied, her eyes gleaming in the darkness. "The Dubois family has been chosen. We are the guardians of this power. And you, my dear husband, are going to help us unleash it." She lunged at me, her movements swift and unnatural. I stumbled back, knocking over a stack of boxes. I grabbed a heavy metal candlestick and swung it at her. She dodged the blow with ease and grabbed my arm, her grip like a vice. Her nails, long and sharp, dug into my skin. "Don't fight it, Elias," she hissed, her breath hot on my face. "It's your destiny." I struggled against her, but she was too strong. I couldn't break free. As she dragged me towards the hidden room, I saw a glimmer of hope. A small, silver knife lay on the floor, glinting in the dim light. I reached out and grabbed it, my fingers closing around the cold, hard steel. With a surge of adrenaline, I plunged the knife into her chest. She gasped and stumbled back, her eyes wide with shock. For a moment, she looked human. Then, her eyes glazed over, and she collapsed to the floor. I stood over her lifeless body, panting, my hands trembling. I couldn't believe what I had done. I had killed my wife. The police arrived shortly after, summoned by a neighbor who had heard the commotion. Detective Mallory, his face grim, surveyed the scene. He found the hidden room, the journal, the ritualistic artifacts. He arrested me, of course. I tried to explain what had happened, but my words were fragmented and incoherent. I sounded like a madman. I was placed in a psychiatric facility, diagnosed with a severe mental breakdown. Dr. Armitage continued to treat me, but I never fully trusted him. I always suspected he knew more than he was letting on. Years passed. I was eventually released from the facility, deemed stable. But I was never the same. The memories of my marriage haunted me, and the questions remained unanswered. I returned to the town, hoping to find some closure. But the town was eerily unchanged. The disappearances had stopped, but the air was still thick with secrets. I learned that Clara's body had never been found. Some said she had escaped. Others believed she had been taken by something else. I stood in front of my old house, staring at its darkened windows. A flicker of recognition passed through me. I remembered the garden, the moonlight, Clara's chanting. I noticed something different, something I hadn't seen before. A single white rose, blooming in the dead of night, right where Clara had been standing. A rose, impossibly perfect, impossibly white. Was it a sign that she was still alive? Or was it just a figment of my broken mind? I didn't know. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I would never know. I was forever trapped in a nightmare of my own making, a prisoner of my own paranoia. Marriage, the ultimate sacrifice. I wasn't ready. But I made it anyway.